Well. We meet again. Yes, we do. We meet again. Who am I talking to? Oh, that's right. I'm talking to the fans. How you guys doing, everyone? It is July 22nd, 2021. And let me tell you folks something. Football is creeping up on you. Down in Duval County, on July 20th, training camp started for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Your 2023 NFL Super Bowl champions have started training camp 2 years early for their Super Bowl run. But I digress. Today, we are going to talk about a list that the 2023 Jacksonville Jaguars will soon be a part of, which is the greatest teams in NFL history. And maybe even one of the greatest coaches in NFL history, in Urban Meyer. But we have a top 11 list to discuss that as well. We are pairing the coaches today with the greatest NFL teams in the history of the NFL. And it just so happens that we're talking about this as fantasy football's around the corner, as the Hall of Fame games around the corner, as preseasons around the corner. And guess what, folks? Most important news. If you're not vaccinated, you could forfeit a game this year. Really? Yeah, John just shook his head. Really? Yeah, you can. We'll get into that in a couple of minutes. Buckle up. Get yourself ready. We're going 0 to 60 in a couple of seconds here on Perfect Spiral. Johnny boy,
what's up, Joe?
How we doing, pal?
I'm doing great.
Yeah?
Yeah, I'm doing all right.
That's great. Can't wait to get into this with you. Yes.
I won't have to forfeit a game. I have my vaccine.
Did you fucking hear that today?
That's insane.
So if they have a COVID outbreak on a team, and the unvaccinated players are the people that are part of the COVID outbreak, and they don't have enough players to field a team, the game will not be rescheduled. They will forfeit and be handed an L.
That's ridiculous. That is ridiculous.
If that doesn't tell you to get the vaccine, I don't know what does. I do not want to talk about that, but DeAndre Hopkins today, I don't know if you heard this.
No.
DeAndre Hopkins was like, well, I don't know what I'm going to do about playing in the NFL this year.
No way.
Yeah.
No way.
Uh-huh.
It's really going to come to that point.
I don't know. Anyway, folks. You just heard my co-host, John McCarthy, get really upset. My name is Joe Miglio. I am the other host, the more dashing-looking host.
You think so?
I shaved today.
Where?
Oh, come on. I trimmed it a little bit.
I see it. Okay.
I look good, bro. I look good. Welcome to Perfect Spiral. We are here for our 22nd episode. Believe it or not, we are delving into the veteran status here, John. We are no longer rookies at this thing. We are no longer beginners. You know, like if we're playing Madden, you know, we're almost on like the rookie level. You know, like
we're cranking up to pro now.
Yes, we're cranking up to pro. We're
maybe all pro.
No.
Slow down.
Relax.
Okay.
Once we get to episode 50, we'll be at all pro, and then episode 100, when we bring in Skip Bayless to be a part of the desk for episode 100, then we'll be at the Hall of Fame level. But until then, we're turning it up to the rookie level, I think, today. Please don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe on anywhere you listen to this podcast: Apple, Spotify, Google, Pandora, Deezer, Stitcher, anywhere you get it. Thank you to Buzzsprout for being our compañera, as John Sterling would say, and being the site that helps us out with all this stuff. And today marks the penultimate episode of the Legend series, as next week will be our last episode of the Legend series, as we will take on a dual position of safeties and offensive linemen. And then starting in August,
yes,
it is fantasy football season.
Let's
baby.
Go!
It is here. The second place expert will become the first place expert after this year.
Okay.
And the man who does not have a pick in the first 7 rounds will try to tell you how he's going to win the Ronaldo League this year.
You know what's crazy?
Talk to me.
The fact that I don't have a pick in the first 8 rounds, you know what that's going to force me to do?
What?
I'm going to be like, you know how like LeBron was really good at like driving to the basket for the first like 7 years of his career, and then he developed like that post game and that turnaround, and then he developed the shot.
Right.
That's going to be me learning the later rounds of the draft.
Well,
because that's where I always failed, was the depth and the later rounds of my teams.
Well, I'm going to tell you right now. I got a plan. Are you gonna share it now? Or are you gonna save it? Come on, I'm not sharing it with an enemy. You are on Sundays in the Ronaldo League. You are an enemy.
Yeah. Oh, wait till the people who listen to this pod, all the fans, they're gonna love the Ronaldo League stories.
Oh, and then every week we will have. I didn't tell you this, but we are going to have a Scott Muglio segment on this podcast.
Oh, hell yes!
Every week during football season to break down. You think the Ronaldo League? The Ronaldo League is going public this year.
Oh, let's go!
The Ronaldo League's going public.
You just dropped that on me now. I had no idea.
The Ronaldo League is going public, folks. If you don't know what the Ronaldo League is, get ready.
Oh yeah.
But anyway, today we're going to discuss NFL coaches and NFL teams. John, you excited for today?
I'm ready.
You ready?
I'm ready.
So, here's how we're going to do today. We're going to do coaches first, and then teams in the second half of the pod. We did not use the algorithm this week because it's very difficult to assess sacks and passing yards when it comes to coaches and teams. So John and I used our very large brains to put together these lists. A lot of familiar faces for the coaches. The teams, I think we did a pretty good job on. We'll get to in the second half. John, any warning signs before we go to the coaches right now?
What do you mean warning signs?
Is anybody listening to this podcast going to be vitally upset that one of their coaches may not be on this list?
I don't think so. I mean, there was 1 or 2 that I thought should have made the list, but after, we went through it and we went one by one with it.
We did.
The first like 5 or 6 were a lock. There was no changing them.
Absolutely.
But after 6, we did go back and we were looking at numbers. We were looking at teams, situations. Did they win a Super Bowl? No Super Bowl. What their playoff run was like. And there was a few guys that were left out, but we'll get to them.
Well, do you want to talk about the honorable mentions first?
We could talk about the honorable mentions. What do we have? We only had like 2 or 3, right? It wasn't that crazy.
We have a couple.
Okay.
So, first honorable mention we will talk about will be Mike Shanahan.
Yes.
Who was the back-to-back Super Bowl winning coach for the late 90s Denver Broncos teams. And I think Shanahan missed the cut. Right, John said, you mentioned before with the pod, he did win back-to-back Super Bowls. Very impressive.
Very impressive.
Now, I think we have to take into effect who they beat, right? The first one was impressive. They beat Packers team who was coming off a Super Bowl of their own. They were going for back-to-back titles.
Yeah.
And John Elway finally got that elusive first Super Bowl in 1997. I think 98 though was more, and the reason that I think we're gonna talk about the 98 team, I think later, in a very similar situation, where Shanahan knew he had to adjust with that team, and Terrell Davis really had more of an impact in that 98 season.
Oh, they rode Terrell Davis.
Right, they rode Terrell Davis to retirement pretty much. But I think 2 things. One, the opponent they played the Super Bowl was the Atlanta Falcons. They were like a Cinderella story, and Denver kind of just barely beat them. I feel like in that Super Bowl, and so I'm not telling. And Shanahan's second stint in Washington was a complete abject failure.
Oh, it was absolutely.
It was an abject failure, and I think that hurts him in this discussion.
His son is a hell of a coach, though.
His son is a good coach. His son is 0-2 in Super Bowls, though. So
not a good look.
Not a good look so far. But and then another guy who, is named, Lambeau Field is named after this man, Curly Lambeau, who was the coach of the Packers in the 30s and the 40s. Won 7, was it? Or 9?
7, it was 7.
7 NFL titles during his run. Finished 100 games over 500 for his career. The reason I think I was not fond of putting him in is the level of competition was not what it was even in the 50s and the 60s. There weren't as many teams, so it's very difficult to kind of judge a guy like that and to judge that greatness. Not denying the guy was probably smarter than anybody who he was around during his time, but, you know...
The way he stacks up against who we ended up on with the
very,
list,
very difficult.
It's very hard.
Very difficult.
Like some seasons, they only played like 10 games, 8
right.
games.
So it's not, you know, it's almost like an so instead of it being he's left, it's like an incomplete.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
So
like an asterisk. There's an asterisk
right.
with him a little bit.
And then the last guy who John and I went back and forth on a couple of minutes as to whether he belonged on it or not, and we ultimately decided he was going to be basically he's like the first one off the list. Is Bill Parcells.
Yeah, that was a tough one.
I know John wanted him on the list, but I think the thing that left him off was his overall career record.
Yeah, it was like 170 and 130, right?
Yeah, he was only like 42 games over 500, and he went to Super Bowls with the Giants and won. He went to Super Bowls with the Patriots and lost in 96 to the Packers. Mm-hmm. He went to back-to-back title games with the Jets in late 90s. So he was pretty successful in those 3 stops. In Dallas, he did not do great.
No, he was terrible.
He did not do great in Dallas. And I think that's where a lot of his losses came from. Mm-hmm. But nothing... To be a coach and to basically turn not 1, not 2... but 3 franchises around. I challenge anyone to go look at what the Giants were before Bill got there in the 80s, before what the Patriots were before Bill got there in the 90s, and what the Jets were before Bill got there in the late 90s. None of those teams were good before Bill got there, and he basically rebuilt those franchises in a year or 2.
And you know what's funny, too, about Parcells is a lot of his work is still in the league today. Like a lot of the coaches that were associated with him are still in the league. Sean Payton.
Yeah.
Wasn't Belichick under Parcells?
Yes, he was. He was part of those 80s Giants championships.
Yeah, so Belichick and Sean Payton still in the league, still really good coaches. So I think what it is a lot of people like myself are enamored with the name because of the lineage of coaches that came from him.
Yeah.
But he was a great coach, but ultimately we couldn't fit him in on the list.
When you hear the names that we're going to discuss, there may be one name up for discussion that people are going to contend that Parcells may be better than, but I'm going to tell you why I don't think he is.
We also left Tony. Was Tony Dungy off the list?
Tony Dungy was off the list. I don't think he stacks up with the 3 guys we just mentioned.
Yeah, I don't think so.
But he was in our initial discussion.
He was. We did discuss him.
So without further ado, let's get started with number 11. This coached started in the 1960s and coached all the way up to 1988. So we coached for 29 years with this franchise, and that would be the great Tom Landry, who coached the Dallas Cowboys from 1960 to 1988, won 2 Super Bowls with the Cowboys, 1971 and in 1977. Had a career record of 250 and 162, good for a 607 winning percentage.
Pretty good.
His playoff record was not great, and this is kind of what put him towards the bottom of the list. 20-16 career playoff record, good for 556. But he was in 36 playoff games. There's something to sniff about at all. And while he coached, which I find this interesting, there's a stat here where it's basically like what his coaching rank was during the years he was a coach. Mm-hmm. And over the course of the 29 years he was a coach, his average rank was 2.4, which is pretty impressive.
Very impressive.
Very, very impressive. Went 2-3. So he went to 5 Super Bowls. He went 2-3 in those Super Bowls that he went to. And I believe the 3 that they went to, the 3 that they lost, and they lost to the Chiefs, and they lost the final 2 to the Pittsburgh Steelers. But Tom Landry is undoubtedly the winningest coach in Cowboy history, and he is the coach that really started the Dallas Cowboys on the train to success during their tenure. Anything to say about Mr. Tom Landry there?
No, he's very, very important to Dallas Cowboys lore. You know, like the like you said, the history of the Dallas Cowboys. You know, there's so many great coaches that have gone through that building, but he's the one that got it started and really paved the way for them.
Absolutely. Inducted into the Hall of Fame in 1990. So, John, I believe you have number 10 up there?
I do, Joe.
So, number 10 is a man who they named the stadium after the guy.
Paul Brown comes in at number 10.
Brown comes in at number 10. Nice.
He's a 5-time, well, he's a 3-time NFL champ and a 4-time AAFC champ. 1970 Coach of the Year, and he's in the Hall of Fame. He did 40 years as an executive.
Wow!
After he coached for 26 years, so he was in the league.
So he was in the league literally for his whole career, for his whole life, pretty much.
Almost his whole life, yeah. So he basically the Cleveland Browns. We know the Cleveland Browns is like an absolute dumpster fire team, right?
Yes.
So for the entire time that we've watched football, the Cleveland Browns have been absolute dog shit. But if you notice something about Cleveland Browns fans, it's a lot of old-time fans.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fans that were there. They watched these teams. And these teams, these Paul Brown teams, were impressive. They won 5 straight championships.
In the 50s?
He won 5 straight championships. He won a championship in 46, 47, 48, 49, and 50.
That's pretty impressive to be a back-to-back.
And we're not even talking about, Joe, we're not talking about teams that didn't play. They only played like 4 or 5 games. Each season was 14 games.
Yeah,
between 14 and 12 games. So
right.
there was a level of competition there.
And not even that. Just though after those years, they were still fairly successful. Correct?
Yeah, they were pretty successful. So after those years, he won in Cleveland in 54 and 55, and then he did have a short stint in Cincinnati. His record as a coach kind of tails off. He's 213 and 104. With 670.672 win percentage.
That's pretty good.
Pretty good. But there's some years here that are a little like, you know,
a little hazy.
Yeah, a little hazy. 17 and 8 in the playoffs from what they could show.
That's not that bad though. 17 and 8 with 5 championships. I mean,
I want to point something out too, Joe, not to cut you off.
Sure.
We were just talking about this before. There are so many with all these old-time coaches. They all have so many ties. He had 9 ties in his career. I think I've only seen 2 games tie since I've been watching football in 07. But like you were saying, there was no overtime rules, correct?
No, not back then. There were no overtime rules.
Okay.
Not that I know of. So, Paul Brown coming in at number 10, the elusive Hall of Fame Paul Brown. At number 9, I think is a guy, he's an active coach. One of 2 active coaches on our list.
Oh, okay.
And if the Parcells camp was going to make an argument about who he should replace on this list, I think they would argue about this guy. But I'm going to kind of put that to bed, I think, a little bit. Mm-hmm. And that is Andy Reid. Andy Reid, the Big Red, as they call him. The Walrus, as they call him, has been coaching in the NFL for 22 years. And anybody who's known him, he started his coaching career in 1999. He started his coaching career in Philadelphia and coached there until 2012. And then went to the Kansas City Chiefs, where he finally won his first Super Bowl in 2019 with the Kansas City Chiefs. Career record of 221 and 130. So 91 games over 500. Good for a 629 winning percentage so far.
So far.
And let me tell you right now, that's only going to get higher with Patrick Mahomes as his quarterback for the foreseeable future. So this record will be better than it was. He had a career record of 130 and 93 in Philadelphia, and in his 8 years in Kansas City, his career record is 91 and 37.
Incredible.
So that's impressive. Playoffs is now again playoffs. He's played in 32 games, 17 and 15, so a little over 500. And his coaching rank while he was coach for his career is 1.9.
So he's right behind Bill.
So he's right in all the years coaching. He's never ranked lower than number 5.
Wow.
During his career.
1-1 in Super
And that
Bowls.
was his first year as a coach. After his first year as a coach, the only time he's ranked outside of the top 2 is 2005, 2007, and then 2012. Every other year as a coach, Andy Reid has either been ranked number 1 or number 2.
Andy Reid is impressive for so many reasons, Joe. I think one of the best things about him, right? I think we can agree with this, is he is there is a quarterback whisperer in the league. He is the quarterback whisperer. I mean, look at the resume of the quarterbacks that he's had. Favre, McNabb. He made McNabb look like a Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
Alex Smith. He made Alex Smith look incredible. And now you get Patrick Mahomes.
I think he waited long enough to get his prize.
Yeah. I mean, and listen, these Chiefs teams are incredible.
Yeah, and I think, like I said, I think his career, I think his playoff record's going to get better. I think his overall record's going to get better.
Yeah.
I think there's more Super Bowl titles in his future. He's only got 1 right now, but
he should technically have 2.
I think in the 2 last year they got absolutely blitzed by the Bucs. But back in 2004, I think, a year after the Patriots beat the Panthers 32-29, the game was actually in Jacksonville with the Eagles. That was the Terrell Owens game where he came back and he basically played on almost a broken leg. But it's funny, in that Super Bowl, he was actually heavily criticized because of the time management. You remember that? How poorly the time management was in the last couple of minutes of that game when they were down by a point.
Well, that followed him his whole career.
Yeah.
Up until recently.
Yeah. So I think that was the big shtick on Mr. Reid. And after that, I don't think it was really ever the same in Philadelphia. But he stuck around there for 7 more seasons.
Yeah.
After that. He went through, he was there through the McNabb days, through the Kevin Kolb days, through the Michael Vick days. So
that was fun.
Yeah. But I think Big Red with a 629 winning percentage really, really deserves to be on this list. Even more so than Parcells.
Yeah, I agree.
Number 8, we're moving a little along here. Now, this coach, everyone knows who this is because you hear his name every single year. And you hear his name every year, not because of the play on the field, but because of a completely different industry. And that would be the video game industry. John Madden coming in at number 8. Now, John Madden only coached for 10 seasons, John. Do you know what his record was in those 10 years?
103-32.
That is sick. Good for a 759 winning percentage. The man won for his career, John. Mm-hmm. His career. He won 3 out of every 4 games.
Very impressive.
If that's not dominance, I don't know what is. And he didn't do it with the 70s Steelers. He didn't do it with the 70s Cowboys. He didn't do it with the 70s Vikings. He didn't do it with the 70s. He didn't do it with he did it with the Raiders. He did it with the team that challenged all those phenomenal teams.
And the level of competition was incredible.
And he won a Super Bowl in 1976. He won a Super Bowl in 1976. Listen to these records over the course of his career. 12-1, 8 and I'm excluding the ties. 12-1, 8-4, 8-4, 10-3, 9-4, 12-2, 11-3, 13-1, which was the 1976 season. 11-3 and 9-7. Over the course of his career, his playoff record is 9-7, good for 563. His coaching rank, a measly 1.3. In his 10-year career as coach, he never ranked lower than number 2.
He's legendary.
Absolutely legendary.
One of the greatest football pictures of all time, too.
And he is the man who is known for saying, if you could get your hands on the football, you should be able to catch it. Always. I always remember, if you could get your hands on the ball, you should be able to catch the ball.
Look at Joe pulling out random John Madden quotes.
John Madden. I mean, it's insanely impressive.
Very impressive.
It's insanely impressive. And on top of that, he became a world-renowned broadcaster after his career was over with Pat Summerall.
Yeah.
World-renowned broadcaster. Amazing coach. Amazing broadcaster. Started he started what is now, I believe, probably the longest running franchise in video game
sports
history.
Yeah.
I don't think not a game that has come out every year. That game comes out every year. A successive game comes out every year. Madden, NFL football, you know it's coming no matter what.
Yeah, you're getting it too.
No matter what. Has the gameplay tailed off in the past couple of years? Absolutely it has. But everybody buys it because it's fucking Madden NFL football.
Do you do the franchise?
I want to do the franchise. I hope they fucking fix it this year.
I always do the fantasy draft, and I just draft like a ridiculous team.
Yeah, see, that's why I always take a bad team. And this year,
I always lose anyway.
This year, I could play as the Jaguars because they're truly a bad football team who's on the horizon. So it could actually be fun playing them.
Joe is gonna lose in the AFC divisional round. He's gonna freak out.
I'm gonna have throw 60 touchdown passes.
Wait, real quick on the topic of Madden, we should do a and this is totally random. I'm just throwing this out there, Joe.
Talk to me.
We should do before the season starts. We should do a stream.
Yeah,
we should.
I brought this up.
Yeah, us playing Madden or us simulating the season or just doing something.
I said we could do that. I also said we could do a tournament with the top teams that we're going to discuss today.
That's right.
To see if our rankings, quote unquote, hold true.
Oh, we have to do it now.
So, moving on to number 7, and this guy coached for 16 years and coached in the NFC East, and that would be Joe Gibbs. And Joe Gibbs coached the Redskins from 1981 to 1992, and then went back and coached them from 2004 to 2007. Had a career record of 154 and 94, good for a 621 winning percentage, and playoff record. Listen to this. A playoff record of 17-7, good for 71%, winning 3 Super Bowl titles in during his tenure in 81, 87, and 91, and losing a Super Bowl in 1983. Coach rank 2.4 in his career, never ranked below number 4. So that is also very, very impressive. And Joe Gibbs had a losing record 3 times during his career. So in his 16 years as a coach, he only had a losing record 3 times.
3-1 in Super Bowls, too.
3-1 in Super Bowls. That's very, very impressive as well.
Is it safe to say that Washington hasn't had success since Joe Gibbs left?
I believe that is probably very accurate, yes. I believe that is accurate. And Joe Gibbs, goes underrated because those Washington teams, if you were to tell a casual fan, and I'm dead serious about this, if you were to tell a casual football fan that the Washington Redskins won 3 Super Bowls in the span of the years 1982 to 1992, they wouldn't believe you, because they would have you believe that the Niners and the Cowboys and the Raiders and all the Bears and all those teams of the 80s ran the league. But just quietly, the Bills, the Broncos, who were good during those times, quietly,
very quietly,
the Redskins won 3 Super Bowls during that era. And I know he did it with a different quarterback in 2 of the Super Bowls. I don't know who the quarterback was in the 1982 season for the Washington Redskins. I could try to pull it up really quick.
Who, the 1982? I have it right here.
1982 quarterback for the Redskins during that season. I don't know who it was, but if it's different than Mark Rippon or
it was Joe Theismann.
So he did. He won 3 Super Bowls with 3 different quarterbacks. He won a Super Bowl with Joe Theismann. He won a Super Bowl with Doug Williams, and he won a Super Bowl with Mark Rippon.
Wow. 3
different quarterbacks, 3 Super Bowls during a 10-year span.
It's incredible.
Talk Talk about a winner. Joey Gibbs. And he has his own NASCAR line. Fun fact.
I didn't even know that.
Gibbs Racing. Yep.
Wow.
Big guy like that. Now, number 6, as we're moving along here, is a man who the NFC trophy is named after. And that would be the George Halas trophy. George Halas, Papa Bears. Papa Bear, his nickname, as he...
5-time champ.
5-time champion, a Hall of Famer.
Coach for 40 years.
Coached the Chicago Bears for 40 years. Good Jesus Christ. He won 5 NFL titles. And his career record, listen to this. Now, John, this might be the most impressive on this list. So far on our list, he's coached for 500 games, nearly 500, 497 to be exact. Went 318, 148, and 31 for a career winning percentage of 682. Now, think about John Madden, we just spoke about before, 76 winning 759 winning percentage over the course of 10 years, right? Mm-hmm. This man nearly won 70% of the games for 40 years.
Very impressive.
So you're talking about a guy, so when his team took the field every Sunday, they truly expected to win.
Yeah.
Every single week.
And what's crazy is when you go to look a little deeper on him and you go from the 20s to the 50s, overall offense, yards, they had the number one offense at least 20 times here. It's insane. They had the number one offense at least 20 times. It's crazy. See, I'm looking at a lot of this stuff for the first time.
Really?
Like, I looked over it like briefly, but like looking at this stuff like for the first time, seeing how long this guy coached for, seeing how many championships he won, it's crazy.
Yeah, and to have a coach ranking of 2.7
For your entire
over
career.
40 years. 40 years. In his 40-year career, the man never finished lower than 9th as the 9th best coach in his career. That is incredible. That is incredible. I mean, think about, can you imagine being a player during like the end of his tenure in like the 60s and going in. And you know what I'm thinking about too, John? He won 5 titles, right? Mm-hmm. He won a title in 1933. Then he took a 7-year break, won back-to-back titles in 40 and 41, won a title in 46, and then won a title 17 years later in 1963. So it's like he coached during, he was there for everything.
How many different decades is that?
One. Coached, started in 1920. And then, decade 1 to 67. So 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. 5 decades.
So he won
5 titles
in 5 decades.
Yeah, and I mean he won a title he won 3 of those titles in 1 decade.
Okay.
But still.
Yeah, it's still impressive.
It's amazing.
That long.
George Halas coming in at number 6. Number 5 is another, I'm going to call him a freak of nature because
I got him pulled up here.
That's what he is. Oh, you do? Okay.
I got him.
Talk to me.
So number 5 on our list, we've spoken about this team ad nauseum through the Legends series, right? It's about time we talk about the guy who was the coach of those great Steelers teams, Chuck Noll. Chuck Noll was a 4-time Super Bowl champion. Obviously, those 70s Steelers teams, they won 4 in the 70s. He's a Hall of Famer. He has a career record of 193 and 148. So his record's a little deceiving, right? He has a .566 win percentage. It's a little deceiving, right? Because those 70s teams were so dominant.
Right.
And then his career definitely took a little bit of a downturn.
Well, he coached for so long.
Yeah, he coached for almost 23 years, all of them with the Steelers. Which, crazy fact about the Steelers, since the 60s, they've only had 3 coaches. Do you know that? It was Noll,
Yeah.
Cowher,
And then Tomlin.
and Tomlin.
That's absurd. Talk about stability.
That's insane, right?
Yeah, it is.
Because Cowher came right after Noel, and then
Being the fact that the Jaguars have had 3 coaches in the past 6 years. So, yeah.
what about the Browns? It was like every year they had a new
Jets,
coach.
too, right? I mean, my
Insane.
God.
But every year his coaching rank was 2.1 through the 70s.
God.
Yeah.
For 30 years, his coaching rank was 2.1.
For most of the 70s, he was number 1. So
Right.
and he won back-to-back titles twice. He won the back-to-back in 74 and 75, and then 78 and 79.
My Lord.
Very impressive.
I mean, when you get to the top 5 or top 6 of this list, it's like, how do you differentiate these guys, right?
You can't.
And I think you just have to think of the teams that they coached, the dominance that they had during their run, and you could easily make an argument that Chuck Noll should be like number 2 on this list.
Yeah.
But when we talk about the guys we're going to talk about now, were even more dominant than Noel was during his run.
Yeah.
Which says so much. I mean, the guy we're going to talk about next owned a decade. He owned it. Literally owned it. And the teams he owned were incredible. And let's get to that right now. And that is Bill Walsh, number 4, the head coach of the San Francisco 49ers from 1979 to 1988. Won 3 Super Bowls during his tenure. And believe it or not, John, his first 2 years, he's got a career record of 92 and 59 and 1 with the 49ers. Good for a 609 winning percentage. His first 2 seasons, okay,
Were horrendous.
his record was 8 and 24
Yep.
in his first 2 years. And then he lost 3, 9, 15, 16, 22. It took him 6 years to then lose another 24 games after the first 2.
How
6 years.
How insane is that?
That is incredible. He went 10-4 in the playoffs. He was in 14 career playoff games, a 714 winning percentage, a 1.8 rank as a coach. Listen to this. The year they went 2-14, his coaching rank was number 4.
How does that work?
Because it doesn't go according to wins and losses. It goes according to how, like, your metrics as a coach.
Like
your offensive rating, your defensive
okay.
rating. So I'm sure that year they must have lost a lot of close games. They must have put up a ton of yards. They must have, whatever the case may be. But
had probably arguably where did he come in on our list? He came in at number 4.
Number 4.
So I'm going to go according to the Perfect Spiral podcast Legend Series list. Joe Montana. I mean, those, and we're going to talk about these teams, like the teams he coached. I mean,
Joe Montana. Bill Walsh was great, though. He really was. Bill Walsh coming in number 4. Number 3, the man that they named the trophy after, Mr. Vince Lombardi, Mr. Fordham himself. I don't know if you know, they went to Fordham University here in New York.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Coached for 10 years, starting in 1959. Coached the Green Bay Packers. He won 5 titles in 10 years. So half of his coaching career, he won a title. That's how good he was.
Yeah.
And his career record was 96 and 34. Good for 738 over the course of 10 years. He had oh my God, this is wild. John, he played in 10 playoff games and his career record was 9-1. He had a 900 winning percentage.
That's nuts.
In the playoffs. 1.5 coaching rank over the course of his career. And I mean, he went 5-0. Nope. 5-1 in championship games. And the first championship game he was ever in, he lost in 1960 and then proceeded to win 5 championships. Never lost after that. I mean, talk about greatness.
There it is.
He is. There's a reason the trophy's named after him.
Yep. Synonymous with Green Bay history.
I mean, he is the guy, right? Like Curly Lambeau, they named the stadium after him, but think about how good you got to be to have the NFL championship trophy named after you.
You think they'll ever change it?
No.
You can't, right? Because it's just so legendary.
It's the Lombardi trophy. It's probably like, I think the Stanley Cup is probably the most popular trophy in sports because it's so large and it's just, the Stanley Cup, right? Mm-hmm. After that, it's definitely the Lombardi trophy. 100%.
Yeah, and you can't change.
I think in rank of most popular trophies, I think it's the Stanley Cup, the Lombardi trophy, the World Series trophy number 3, and then the NBA trophy is probably last.
Yeah.
If I had to guess.
Because the finals trophy doesn't have a name to it, no?
It's just like, it's a cool looking trophy.
It definitely looks sick, yeah. It's just like
but it's just, it's the NBA final. It's whatever.
And the baseball one doesn't have a name either.
It's a World Series trophy. It's just the World Series trophy. It's not like called the MLB trophy. It's called the World Series trophy.
And it's just a hunk of metal anyway.
So that's true.
To quote Rob Manfred.
Number 2. Do you have number 2?
I do.
Talk to me, baby.
All right, so number 2 is Don Shula.
Don Shula.
So Don Shula is a Hall of Famer. He is a 4-time Coach of the Year, 2-time Super Bowl champion. Now, what's impressive about Shula is when you think of Miami Dolphins football, you think of Don Shula. He actually had a little bit of a stint in Baltimore. He did pretty well in Baltimore in the 60s. And then through the 70s and 80s, he was with Miami. He won 2 Super Bowls. He won back-to-back in 72 and 73. And he did go back to the Super Bowl 2 more times after that and did lose.
Right.
Career record of 328 and 156. Good for a 67% win percentage. His coaching rank through his entire career, Joe, are you ready for this? Through 33 years, it is a 1.8.
That's incredible.
When he was with Miami, it was a 1.9. When he was at Baltimore, it was a 1.6. Yeah. Incredible coach. I mean, he was...
And, of course...
Very, very long tenure.
The coach of the only undefeated team in NFL history.
Which we will get to then, but yes.
I mean...
The cheese stands alone.
You know what it is? I think, I remember Remember the Titans movie when they're in the championship game and they go into halftime. They're down 7-3. And, Herman Boone, who is played by Denzel Washington, is talking to his guys and he's like, hey, I just want you to play hard, And Wood Harris, who plays Julius, the linebacker, says, no, coach, you demanded perfection. And up to this point, we've been perfect. And it's like a chilling scene. And to think of giving me chills that a high school team could be perfect. How much effort, mental effort, physical effort goes in to being a perfect team.
It's very, very, very
perfect
hard.
Team. And I'm going to give everybody a little bit of a preview here. They're not number 1 on our list.
No, they're not.
And I'm going to give you the reason why. I'm not going to give it to you now. I'm going to give you the reason why they're not number 1. Okay? There's one reason they're not number 1. And it's kind of one thing that's been held against them for about 40 years. And it should be true. We'll get to it later. Don Shula, number 2. And, of course...
Do we even have to talk about him?
Number 1. The one and only.
Most Super Bowls by a head coach.
Bill Belichick. Coach Bill.
Oof. Joe, don't even look at the numbers. It's crazy.
Started his coaching career in 1991 with the Cleveland Browns and was unsuccessful. Unsuccessful. Coaching records of 6-10, 7-9, 7-9, 11-5 one year, and then 5-11.
And then wait, were you going to get to the
Jet thing?
Yes.
You could talk about that.
So he was going to be the coach of the Jets.
He was.
And then Robert Kraft, didn't Robert Kraft fly him out or something, or they tried to trade for him?
It was something along those lines where he resigned. I don't think he was going to accept it, or he verbally accepted it.
And then he faxed them that fax.
And then he backed out.
Yeah, he backed out, and then he went to New England.
Right. Then he went to New England. And what he's done in New England, and people could say it's all because of Tom Brady. That's a hunk of shit. It's
Bullshit.
not. You don't win 6 titles by yourself.
People forget Brady wasn't Brady for the first 3.
I don't really care. And you're right, John. He wasn't
Brady.
He
for
wasn't
first
the
3.
Brady yet, right? He was young Brady.
Yeah. It was that
And,
defense.
You know, people forget that the year after they won their first Super Bowl in 2001, they missed the playoffs the next year. They went 9-7, and then they won back-to-back titles. What he's been able to do, we haven't even gotten to his numbers yet. Career 280 and 136, good for a 673 winning percentage. But it's important to differentiate how he did in Cleveland compared to how he did in New England. His career coaching record in Cleveland was 36-44. In New England, he's 244 and 92.
That's insane.
Okay? Good for a 726 winning percentage. He's a career 31 and 12 in the playoffs. 43 career playoff games, which is by far the most of all time by a head coach. His career coaching rank is 1.7. And from 2009 to 2019, he was ranked number 1 every year. And if you want to go back even further, from 2003 to 2019, he was ranked number 1 every year outside of 2008, and that was the year that Tom Brady got hurt. And he still finished number 2 because that team finished 11-5 without Brady. And Matt Castle was the quarterback of that team.
Yeah, I remember that team.
So anyone who wants to tell me that Bill Belichick is not the greatest head coach of all time sincerely could take a walk. He went 6-3 in Super Bowls, defeating the St. Louis Rams, defeating the Carolina Panthers, defeating the Philadelphia Eagles, then losing to the New York Giants twice, then defeating the Seattle Seahawks, defeating the Atlanta Falcons, losing to the Philadelphia Eagles in 2017, and then in 2018, defeating the Los Angeles Rams. So they went to Super Bowl in 3 different. This is the thing that gets me about Belichick. From 01 to 04, that was like their first mini dynasty, right? Because they won 3 out of 4 years. And then fast forward about from 04 to 2014, 10 years later. Then they went to the Super Bowl 4 out of the next 5 years. So they went to Super Bowl in 2014, 2016, 2017, and 2018. And they won 3 out of 4 Super Bowls there. I mean, to have that disparity for Tom Brady to age 10 years and then you basically do the same thing. And you're right, John. In the early days, they won the Super Bowl pretty much based off their defense.
Yeah, not as much. It wasn't
right?
Brady.
And then in the latter years, they won from their offense.
Yep.
Because their defense was a little weaker. Just an incredible mind, an incredible coach.
Yeah, and then you look at the Patriot way, you know, and what he what he instills in those players there, and that they expect a level of excellence, right? And we don't need to talk about last year. Last year was I think a fluke of a year. I think he'll be back. I think they'll be back in the playoffs this year with Cam Newton. I mean, I can't believe I'm saying that, but there's nothing to say about Belichick. He's incredible. And, he doesn't really talk very much. And then he drafted Mac Jones, so who knows? Maybe they could just do it all over again. I mean, how many years has he got left in the tank? He's like 69 now, right?
Oh, my God. Yeah, I think so. He's probably been from the 10 years.
Another 10 years, right? Probably.
So, well, folks, that is the top NFL coaches list. Again, one more time: Tom Landry, Paul Brown, Andy Reid, John Madden, Joe Gibbs, George Halas, Chuck Noll, Bill Walsh, Vince Lombardi, Don Shula, and Bill Belichick. We're going to take a quick break, and when we get back, we are going to discuss the top NFL teams of all time.
I'm not who you want me to Hey y'all, Spencer Blinn, the producer for Perfect Spiral Podcast, and you're listening to my band Hollow Choir's new song, What You Want. Available now on Spotify. What you want.
All right, guys, we're back here, and we are ready to move on from coach to teams.
Let's do it, Joe.
You ready to rock and roll?
Ready.
You want to get right to it? You want to talk about honorable mentions first?
Sure.
I mean, there's really only two that come to mind for me.
Okay.
It's the 98 Broncos, who we discussed before. And we kind of already went over why I think they're not in the opponent that they played in the Super Bowl. Their team was great, obviously. Terrell Davis, John Elway, his last year of his career. Rod Smith, Ed McCaffrey, Coach Mike Shanahan, Shannon Sharp. Plenty of Hall of Famers and great players on that team. But I think the 97 team was better. And I just don't think they stack up against these teams. I really don't.
That's fair.
And then the other team I want to discuss really quickly is the 2000 Baltimore Ravens.
Wow. Okay.
That team, I'll tell you right now, if that team had a better quarterback, they'd be a top 5 team of all time.
Yeah, it was Trent Dilfer, right?
Yeah. That defense was ridiculous. And I don't know if they shut out the Giants in Super Bowl.
I think they did.
That was probably, I think outside of the team we're going to discuss now, we're going to discuss right now, that might have been the most impressive Super Bowl I've ever seen in my life.
34-7.
34-7. Yeah. I think the one, that was probably the second biggest dominance. You got that one. You got what we just witnessed this past season with the Bucs beating the Chiefs.
They went as a wild card team, too.
And then, the team we're going to discuss now at number 11, I think probably had the most dominating Super Bowl win I've ever seen in my life.
Oh, yes.
So the first team we're going to discuss here, folks, is a team who we recently saw, and it was the only time Super Bowl has been held in New York City.
New York.
And that is the 2013 Seattle Seahawks.
What a team.
Talk the Legion of Boom, Russell Wilson, Pete Carroll.
Marshawn Lynch.
An absolute amazing team. And let's look at they had a record of 13-3. Scored 417 points, 26.1 points per game, good for 8th in the NFL. And then only allowed 231 points, which is good for 14.4 points per game. They had an average of plus 11.7, and that was best for number 1 in football. They had the best football
point differential,
point differential, and they had the best defense, scoring defense in football. They, as we mentioned before, they won the Super Bowl 43-8 against the Denver Broncos. Remember the first play of that game was a safety?
Yes, and
it just set the tone for the whole game.
The whole game, and you know what's crazy? To talk about that Denver team, that was the year Peyton Manning threw 55 touchdowns.
That's what I was going to bring up.
Yeah.
The Broncos offense, I remember that Sunday night. Wasn't that Sunday night that he threw 7 touchdowns on the opening night?
Yep.
And it was it was sick.
That'll hang on his career. That Super Bowl loss will hang on him a little bit.
You think so?
I think so, because you're coming in as it was the number 1 offense versus the number 1 defense, right? They had to be the number 1 offense. He threw 55 touchdowns.
Yeah.
And then I know that what's his name was Sean Moreno was the quarterback. I mean, it was the running back, correct?
Oh my God, yes, I think so.
Yeah, Sean Moreno was the running back.
Sean Moreno.
Julius Thomas was the tight end. Yeah, they were impressive in that defense, man. He shut them down.
Yeah, they were a team on another level. It was just absolutely ridiculous. I mean, I'm looking at their scores and their schedules right now. They just, some of the 29-3, 45-17, 33-10, 41-20, 34-7, 23-0, 27-9. They didn't necessarily blow any teams out during their playoff run. They won 23-15 against the Saints, and they won 23-17 against the Niners in the championship game. But then they got to the Super Bowl, and they just absolutely embarrassed the Broncos.
Yeah, embarrassed.
Completely embarrassed the Broncos. Anything you want to say quickly about the 2013 Seattle Seahawks?
No, it's good that team won a Super Bowl when they had those guys together, right?
And they went to a second one.
Yeah, and
they lost to the to the greatest coach of all time.
that was such a stupid throw, but that's a conversation. For
Very,
another
very
day.
stupid throw. Very dumb throw. So now we're going to talk about another team who the coach was on our list of top coaches of all time. And that is going to be the 1971 Dallas Cowboys, who won a Super Bowl. Head coach, as we mentioned, by Tom Landry. That team went 11-3, and again, remember this is before the 16-game schedule. Mm-hmm. And they averaged 29. Listen to this: 29 points a game. They averaged in 1971, way ahead of their time. Good for number one. And then they gave up 15.9 points a game, which was good for seventh in the league. Defeated the Miami Dolphins in the Super Bowl 24-3, so another blowout there. And think about this: they gave up 18 points in 3 games in the 1971 playoffs. They won 20-12 in the divisional round against the Vikings, won 14-3 in the conference championship against the Niners, and then won 24-3 against the Miami Dolphins in the Super Bowl. That team and it's funny too, after week 7, they were 4-3. And then they did not lose another game after Halloween.
They turned it around. Was that their bye week?
No.
Oh.
They didn't. John, they didn't have byes back then. On 14 weeks.
Oh wow.
They just played straight through.
Wow. Oh my God. Don't let a player now hear that.
And during the playoffs, they didn't have a break either. Their last game of the year was December 18th. And they played their divisional game on Christmas Day, December 25th.
No way.
I swear to God.
That's fucking
I'm looking
sick.
at it right now. They did not have a break. So from September 19th to January 16th, they played every single Sunday.
That's so fucking bizarre. Like a Christmas Day divisional game? I love that.
Christmas Day divisional game, and they beat the Minnesota Vikings 20-12.
Well, on to
At
the
least
next
we were
team.
in the game.
On to the next team. Who came in at number 9?
Do you have the next team up?
Yeah. So at number 9 is the 1984 San Francisco 49ers. So me and you went back and forth about this a little bit, right? So it was between, there's 2 49ers teams on this list. There had to be. 84 Niners were 15-1. They won the Super Bowl. You know what's crazy about Football Reference, Joe?
What?
It has their expected wins and losses.
That's pretty cool. I didn't know that.
So they were expected to win almost 14 games, and they won 15 games.
That's ridiculous.
That's kind of bizarre.
Oh my God, so good.
Yeah.
I'm looking at this.
This team is incredible. So the only loss they had was to the Pittsburgh Steelers, and they lost by 3 points. They gave up only 26 points in the playoffs. And they beat the Miami Dolphins, which, I mean, we could talk about how they made Dan Marino look absolutely stupid.
It was really funny because I was watching that America's game on NFL Network like 2 weeks ago.
Really?
That particular year, yeah.
The general manager was John McVay. Any relation to Sean McVay?
I don't know. Actually, it's a great point.
Maybe somebody can figure it out.
Listen, averaged 30 points a game, and then they gave up 14. Goodness
Their
gracious.
defensive coordinator, oddly enough, was George Seifert, who went on to win 2 more Super Bowls as the head coach. Where did you see the other information that you were just reading off?
What do you mean?
You were reading off their...
Oh, yeah, the very top. Points 475, 29.7 points per game, and then they gave up 227 points.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
14.2 points per game. Good for first in defense, second on offense.
Wow.
I mean, good Christ. I mean, are you kidding me? They didn't run away with a lot of these games in the regular season, if you think about it. I mean, the first 3 weeks, they won by 3, then by 6, then by 10. So they got progressively better
Yeah.
as the year went on. Then they lost to the Pittsburgh Steelers on October 14th, 2017. And then that was a wrap. I mean, good Lord. I mean, in week 15, sorry, John, to bring up your Vikings again, they beat the Vikings 51-7. Goodness gracious.
Why do you got to do this to me?
I'm sorry, man. I root for the Jaguars. Stop. Okay? It just, I mean, and then talk about the guys on the team, right? Joe Montana, Jerry Rice. Where's the list of guys that are on the roster? Show passing. Here we go.
All these 80s.
Joe Montana. They had Roger Craig. And then they had where's my punt receiving? Dwight Clark. Like we mentioned. Mike Wilson, Russ Francis was the tight end. Derek Harmon, Wendell Tyler, who had a good year. I mean, we're just talking about guys. And then you look at the defense, Ronnie Lott, Dwight Hicks, Keena Turner, Fred Dean, Carlton Williamson, Eric Wright. Just guys who are synonymous with NFL lore. And the 1984 49ers really deserve the spot that they're in. The next team we're going to discuss, John, do you have them up?
I do have them up, and I want to highlight something before we discuss them.
Sure.
So the team we're going to talk about is the 1999 Rams, greatest show on turf. While you were just talking about the 84 Niners, I was just going back, and I accidentally clicked back to 1998, and then I was like, all right, screw it, I'm gonna look at 1997. Mm-hmm. So when I went back, and actually, you know what, I'm not even gonna lie, I went to 1996. So in 1996, they were 6-10.
Mm.
They made a coaching change. They brought in Dick Vermeil. They were 5-11. 97.
Right.
98, they were 4-12. 1999, they turned into the greatest show on turf. 13-3.
Kurt.
An incredible turnaround.
Can we talk about everyone talks about the offense, right? And they averaged 32.9 points a game, which was ridiculous, right?
Yeah.
They only gave up 15 points a game. So it's not like they were in shootouts every week.
No.
Their defense was awesome, and their defense was good for 4th best in the NFL.
Yeah.
So
overlooked completely in the whole discussion about them.
Talk about this, right? In the playoffs, John, I'm so sorry. They defeated the Minnesota Vikings in the divisional round.
I'm taking L's so hard today. It's
49-37, right? So it was complete shootout, right? The Dante Culpepper, Randy Moss team, I think. And then the next week in the conference championship against the Tampa Bay Bucks, do you know what the final score of that game was?
It was 10-6.
11-6. So they completely won on their defense. That is a complete team. A complete team. Just unbelievable. This is nuts, John. At the beginning of the year, their Super Bowl odds were plus 15,000.
Where's that?
At the very bottom, right underneath where it's at.
Oh, kill me. Their over-under was 5.5 wins.
Oh, my gosh.
Who cashed that check?
Somebody
cashed that ticket.
A massive check. And, I mean,
That's crazy.
And they started, they came out with a bang, right? They came out 27-10 against the Ravens, 35-7, 38-10, 42-20. 41-13, 34-3. John, they were obliterating teams. And then they played the Tennessee Titans and lost to them. They lost 24-21 in Tennessee. And then they continued their utter dominance the rest of the season. Until they ended up winning the Super Bowl. But I mean, you talk about Hall of Famers all over the place. Kurt Warner, Marshall Faulk, Isaac Bruce, Torrey Holt's going to be a Hall of Famer. And then you
Orlando
have
Pace.
Orlando Pace, who's one of the greatest left tackles of all time. They just had an electric offense, right? And, it's funny too because they were never they went to Super Bowl the year after and they lost to the Patriots.
No, they didn't go the year after.
2 years after?
2001. I was just looking at it.
Yeah, 2 years after.
And that team was 14-2.
Yeah, 2 years after they went to Super Bowl. They lost to the Patriots, Tom Brady's first title. But watching that team play, and I remember that season very, very vividly, John, because that was probably the greatest Jaguar season ever. And that's the reason I remember it, is because I'll never forget it. Like, my uncles are huge Ram fans. My two uncles are really big Ram fans. And I was a kid, but I was a big Jaguar fan.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget Championship Sunday. And the Rams were playing the night game against the Bucs. And we were at my house. And the Jaguars were playing the Titans, right? And it was AFC Central. That was the days before the 4 divisions. There was the 3 divisions. And the Jaguars went 14-2 that year. And the only 2 games they lost were both to the Tennessee Titans. And I remember sitting in the kitchen in my house, watching that AFC title game and watching them lose to the Titans for a 3rd time. And I cried my eyes out because my uncle told me if the Rams played the Jaguars in the Super Bowl, we would have went to the game. And I was so mad.
Oh, my God.
And I was so upset. I was like 8 years old. I was so upset they lost.
The worst thing that ever happened to you before 10.
Oh, it was brutal. But the Rams were so good.
They were.
So good. And talk about maybe one of the greatest finishes in Super Bowl history. Kevin Dyson comes up a yard short of the game-tying potential touchdown as time expires.
Oof.
What a game.
You want to know another fun fact, Joe?
Yeah.
That was the first Super Bowl I ever watched.
Was it really?
Yeah.
Damn. That's a good one. Okay. Now,
We're moving along here.
we are moving along here. We're going down to number 8.
7.
7?
You're on 7.
Are we? Oh yeah, number 7. Wow, we are moving along. Okay. You wanna start it up?
Hold on. I gotta get.
Oh, you gonna get it up? I get it up.
Let's see who gets it up first.
All right, so we're gonna talk about the 19.
That sounded.
We're gonna talk about the 1983 Los Angeles Raiders. Okay, and the Los Angeles Raiders of 1983. Right, we mentioned the 1976 Raiders before, who went 15-1. The 1983 Raiders are a team that was so weird in so many ways that makes them, I think, one of the greatest teams of all time. They went 12-4 that year. They averaged 27.6 points a game, good for 3rd in football, and then they gave up 21.1 points a game. That was good for 13th. But they absolutely routed the teams in the playoffs. 38-10 over the Steelers in the divisional, 30-14 against the Seattle Seahawks, who were then an AFC team in the conference, and then they absolutely blitzed the Washington Redskins in 1983, 38-9, who were coming off a Super Bowl win the previous year in 1982, as we just mentioned with Joe Gibbs and Joe Theismann. This team was a team who was not really, I don't think, supposed to go to the Super Bowl. They were not a team that was, I think, really feared. Jim Plunkett was the quarterback of that team that year. And he had a decent year. He didn't have a great year. He threw 20 touchdowns and 18 interceptions that year. So it wasn't a great year. But the thing that gets me about that team is that team battled a lot of adversity that season. And I think their coach and the way that they were coached during that season really, really brought them out on top and made them into, I think, like I said, one of the most underrated teams ever. And I really wanted to give them their recognition here because they beat in a decade with the Redskins and the 49ers and the Bengals. It was the 1983 Raiders that came and they kind of took the league by storm that year. Never won a Super Bowl again during that decade. Okay, that was actually the last year I think the Raiders have won a Super Bowl. They haven't won a Super Bowl since that 1983 season. So that was their last title. And Tom Flores, who is just going into the Hall of Fame this year, I believe, as a coach, probably did a top 5 coaching job I've ever seen in my life. I mean, I didn't see it, but watching that America's team and watching all those things happen, the 1983 Raiders really, really did a fantastic job of coaching and playing, and really scheming every team that they played to the point where they really, I mean, They had in week 1 they played the Bengals, who were very good, the Boomer Esiason Bengals, and beat them 20-10. They just beat teams down. They didn't like blow anybody out, but they just really beat you down. They lost to the Redskins in week 5, 37-35. And they lost to the Seahawks 38-36. So they lost to 2 of the 3 teams that in the regular season who they beat in the playoffs. I think just goes to a testament of the type of will that team had during that year.
Impressive.
So let's move on to the 1986 New York Football Giants.
This is one of the Parcells championships, right?
It is, yes. And this is the team that I think that they finished. Oh, whoops! I went to the wrong year. I do not want the 2017 New York Giants who went 3-13. That would be pretty bad. They went 14-2 that year, and their calling card was their defense. I mean, Carl Banks, Harry Carson, Lawrence Taylor. I mean,
1986, we said, right?
Yeah. Averaged 23.2 points per game, good for 8th best, and then gave up only 14.8 points per game, good for 2nd best in football.
Wow.
Yeah. Go ahead.
So they beat So Bill Belichick is the defensive coordinator of this team. They beat the 49ers 49-3.
49-3
in the division.
The 80s 49ers.
Joe Montana 49ers.
Yeah.
They beat the Washington Redskins 17-0. Mm-hmm. And then they beat the Denver Broncos in the Super Bowl 39-20.
Just, and to boot, Phil Simms was the quarterback. He wasn't a great quarterback. He was an average quarterback. He wasn't a great quarterback.
They won with defense.
That defense was ridiculous. It was so unbelievably good. You think about that era, right? And we're going to talk about the 1985 Bears coming up shortly. Think about the Bears defense in 85 and the Giants defense in 86. I mean, just unbelievable defenses. Like, just smash mouth.
Oh, they had LT. I mean,
probably maybe the overall best defensive player ever in Lawrence Taylor. A defensive genius in Bill Belichick, who was really getting his stripes during those 80s years.
A little bit.
And, just an absolute phenomenal team, the 1986 Giants. John, it is time to talk about the one team on this list who did not win the Super Bowl title.
So let me just let everybody know something really quick. So when me and Joe were planning this whole thing, we discussed this team and possibly said they could have been the greatest team of all time. They were always going to make the list.
There's definitely an argument they could be first.
There is an argument, even though without a Super Bowl, there's an argument they could be the greatest team of all time. And that is the near perfect, just missed it, 2007 New England Patriots.
I mean, where do you start? You start at 16-0.
16-0, yep.
You then go to, which is insane, 36.8 points a game, obviously first. And then they only gave up 17.1 points a game, which was fourth. They were the odds-on Super Bowl favorite that year at plus 250. They defeated my Jacksonville Jaguars in the first round of the playoffs, 31-20. Then they defeated the San Diego Chargers in the AFC title game, 21-12. And then they lost to the Giants 17-14 now after the David Tyree amazing catch in that Super Bowl.
Coated on his helmet, yeah.
This team was unbelievable.
Unreal.
Listen to the scores of these games. 38-14, 38-14, 38-7, 34-13, 34-17, 48-27, 49-28, 52-7. The Colts gave them a run for their money, 24-20. Then they come off the bye week and they beat the Bills 56-10. Then they had a couple of games where they played tough teams. They beat the Eagles 31-28, Ravens 27-24. Then they beat the Steelers 34-13. They beat the Jets 20-10. They beat the Dolphins 28-7, and then they beat the Giants in New York 38-35 to end the season. And then they go to the playoffs. And this is where I think the pressure got to them a little bit. I remember that Jaguar team in 2007. That was the David Garrard Jaguars.
Yeah.
They were good. They weren't great. They were good enough to obviously make the playoffs.
Yeah.
I think they were like 11-5 or 10-6 that year. Mm-hmm. Jack Del Rio, head coach, very underrated head coach. They should have obliterated the Jaguars. The Jaguars didn't really stand a chance. And not only was it till the fourth quarter of that game that the Patriots pulled away. Mm-hmm. And then they played the Chargers, the Phillip Rivers and LaDainian Tomlinson Chargers in the championship game. They only won by 9 points. I really, really think the pressure got to them during that playoff run.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, to think about having to be perfect.
And you just mentioned it.
And you know what it was? It was not only to be... Everyone expected them to win every game. You know? It's not like they were an underdog in any game they played. You know, you never assume a team's going to go undefeated. You just don't, right? Nobody's perfect. But this team played perfect. They literally were, to this day, in my eyes, they are the best team I've ever seen. If I am getting one team to win one game, if it's like trial by combat and I need to win one team but one football team, this is the team I'm taking. This is the team I'm taking. You have the greatest coach of all time. You have the greatest quarterback of all time in his prime.
In his prime.
You have, what we said in our Legend series, the second greatest wide receiver to ever put on a helmet in Randy Moss. You have Hall of Famers on the defense. You had Junior Seau on the defense. You had Ronnie Harrison.
Wes Welker.
You had Ty Law. You had Wes Welker. I mean, good Lord.
I will say this, Joe, about this Patriots team. There's one thing that goes understated here, and I know you said Brady in his prime. This is when I feel like Brady really became Brady, don't you?
You think so?
The 50 touchdowns really was it was different for him. Because if you go and look at his numbers prior to the 50 touchdown season, it wasn't really anything crazy. And then he had this season. And in the 2007 season, he did an interview recently. I think it was on The Shop, actually.
Yeah.
And this one still hurts him. No other Super Bowl hurts him. Because you think about his legacy, right? And you think about Tom. You think about he could have been perfect. He could have had that. Then he could have had the comeback, the 28-3 comeback. There would be there is no argument now. There would never be an argument.
I think if he were to have that complete perfect season, obviously he's already, like we said, he's the greatest football player of all time. You're talking about him, and I don't even really think it's a discussion. You're talking about him as the greatest athlete, the American athlete ever.
He would surpass Jordan.
Ever. Right now, he still might be, but there's an argument to be made. I think if he has that perfect season, there's no argument. He is the greatest American athlete of all time. Him and Jordan and Gretzky and Ruth on a pedestal of their own, but Tom is better than all of them. And I think because he didn't get that, there's an argument to be made of which one's the greatest athlete of all time. So, I don't want to focus too much on a team that did win the Super Bowl, because they didn't. But let's move on to a team that did win the Super Bowl. And that is the 1985 Chicago Bears, who many people believe is the best defense of all time. And they lived up to their name. They gave up 12.4 points per game during the 1985 season.
Wow.
That is absurd. That is good for first in the league. And their offense fed off their defense, obviously. They averaged 28.5 points a game, which was good for second in the league, coached by Mike Ditka. And they famously gave up 10 points in the playoffs, back-to-back shutouts in the divisional round and in the conference championship, beating the Giants 21-0 and then beating the Rams 24-0 in the conference title game, and then absolutely obliterating the Patriots 46-10 in the playoffs.
And they weren't even known for their offense.
No. And you look at, they started the year 12-0, and then they lost to the Dan Marino Dolphins in week 13, 38-24. And then that was the last game that they lost. But good Lord. Refrigerator Perry, Mike Singletary, Jim McMahon was the head coach of that team. You had Mike Ditka as the head coach. That team was just
Loaded
on all fronts. And we talked about, I think we talked about the stretch, I believe, when we were doing, oh God, I forget when we were doing it. We were talking maybe the linebackers. This stretch from week 6 to week 13 to week 12 is absurd. These are the points they gave up from week 6 to week 12. 10, 7, 9, 10, 3, 0, 0.
Yeah, you don't see that nowadays.
It's impossible. They gave up single-digit points in 5 out of 6 games.
I think the closest we've seen to that was your Jaguars, the 2017 Jaguars.
I mean, they were pretty fucking good too, baby.
That defense was really
That defense was really good, man.
Jacksonville.
Really good. Jacksonville. You know the number 3 team up there?
Number 3 is the 72 Dolphins.
Well, yes. Okay.
And you wanted to get to this because you said there's something that hangs over the hat with them.
I do. I think there's something that hangs over their hat for sure. And I think that, that what it is that they notoriously had a very easy schedule that year.
Really?
If you go back and look at the schedule they had, and it's been argued that they had a extremely cupcake schedule during that season. I don't know if you have it on that list.
Let me see.
But their schedule was not against world beaters, to say the least.
Let's see.
But
1972 Dolphins. Hang on, I'm pulling it up.
yeah, baby, talk to me. I'm pulling up on.
Okay, so it doesn't say their strength. Oh, their strength of schedule. Is this their strength of schedule number?
What is it?
Hold on. It's strength of schedule.
Yeah.
Higher. So they had a minus 4.2 strength of schedule.
So 0 is average.
Zero is, it goes from 0 being easy, the higher the number, the harder it is.
Well, the positive higher number, the harder it is. The lower negative number it is, the easier it is.
So minus 4.2.
Yeah.
They had the best offense and the best defense in the league.
I mean, listen, they are a perfect team. They are the only perfect team in sports history. The 1972 Miami Dolphins. They're the only perfect team in sports history. Larry Zonka, Bob Greasy, Don Shula was the head coach of that team, as we mentioned.
They had some close calls in the playoffs, though.
Yeah.
20-14, they beat Cleveland. 21-17, they beat Pittsburgh. And at 14-7, they beat the Redskins.
I mean, listen.
A little tough,
but they played good teams, so that's why it got tougher. But I think that's their only hiccup, and that's why I don't want to put them number 1, because I don't think that they're the best team ever. I mean, on paper they're the best team ever, but I don't think they're the best team ever. I really don't want to hang my hat on the 1972 Dolphins, but they were a phenomenal team. They deserve to be recognized. They are solely number 3 because they're perfect. But what else is there to say?
Yeah.
There's not really much to say. We're moving on to our number 2 team, folks. And
they've made this list so many times. I say this every time they come up because it's just one more time.
Well, you've heard the players constantly. You've heard the coach today, earlier in the podcast.
Mr. Chuck Noll.
And now you're going to get the team. The 1975 Pittsburgh Steelers. Averaged 26.6 points a game, good for 5th, and gave up 11.6, which was not even tops. That was second. Somebody gave up less than that. But 11.6 points a game on that vaunted defense. Joe Green, Jack Ham, Jack Lambert, Mel Blount. Oh, my God.
That's 4.
Lynn Swan, John Stallworth, Franco Harris, Terry Bradshaw. Good Lord. Give me some money.
Team's got 9 Hall of Famers on it.
9 Hall of Famers. It just, incredible team. And they were a team that they were unchallenged pretty much. I mean, they lost 2 games that year. They lost their second game of the year, and they lost the last game of the regular season. But before that, they were just This is what I'm talking about, utter dominance, right? You go on opening week, you beat the Chargers 37-0, right? Then you have stretches, you win 42-6, 20-9, 34-3. Then you win 28-3, 32-9, 20-7, 31-17, 35-14. They didn't get a challenge from the Baltimore Colts in divisional rounds. They got somewhat of a challenge from the Raiders, but they beat them 16-10. And then they beat the Dallas Cowboys 21-17 with probably one of the greatest Super Bowls of all time between Tom Landry and Chuck Noll.
They had an average schedule too. I mean, it definitely was not a cakewalk.
No, but it's just something that you get. There's only so often you get teams that are, amazing, and once in a lifetime teams. And with so many different Pittsburgh Steelers teams to pick from, I feel like this was the greatest one because it really encapsulated. They beat their rival in that Super Bowl. They had the best defensive team during that run of during their run of the 70s and during that year. And I think they were just a team that will be forever lived on as one of the greatest teams ever, and is number 2 on our list. John,
number 1.
We're down to number 1. You want to talk to me about this one?
Yeah. So this was where we had a little bit of a back and forth about, right? Because this is the second 49ers team to grace this list, and we're gonna go with the 1989 49ers as the greatest team of all time.
I want you to walk our fans. Do you have it up, or you want me to?
I'm gonna pull it up. Give me 2 seconds.
27.6 points a game. That was good for number 1 in the league. 15.8 points to give up. That was good for 3rd in the league. Listen to this playoff run, okay? And this is why I think they're number 1, John.
Yes, because
this is why I think they're number 1.
I looked at the other one. I looked at the 84, and
Right.
then after I looked at 89, I was like, okay, no, it's 89. It has to be 89.
This playoff run is, when you talk about dominance, this may be the most. This is like they were playing Madden. I mean, they beat the Vikings 41-13 divisional round. Then they embarrassed the Rams 30-3 in the conference championship. And then they laugh. John, they laugh at the Broncos in the Super. They laugh at them. 55-10.
Outscored their opponents 126 to 26.
55-10. Say that again.
They outscored their opponents in the playoffs 126 to 26.
They beat their opponents by 100 points in 3 games. What more evidence do you need?
There wasn't another team on our list, Joe, that was as dominant as this 1989 49ers
No
team.
way.
Not even close.
I mean, it was sick. It was nuts. I don't know, man.
It's no question.
And just to go back off, you have Joe Montana, obviously 70% completion percentage, threw 26 touchdowns to 8 interceptions. You had Roger Craig, who ran for over 1,000 yards that year. You had Steve Young, who was the backup. Jesus Christ.
He won 3 games.
Then you had Jerry Rice. You have John Taylor. You have Brent Jones, who is the tight end. And then on the defensive side, you had Charles Haley, who we discussed. We had Bill Romanowski. You had Ronnie Lott. It's just...
what a team.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable team. Eric Wright, Bubba Paris, Keena Turner was on that. It's just, the team is ridiculous. And not to mention the fact that Bill Walsh was the head coach of that team. It was his final title as the coach of that team. And when you have one of the top 4th best coach of all time, the 3rd best quarterback of all time, one of the top defensive ends of all time, and Charles Haley, when you have the greatest receiver of all time, and Jerry Rice, when you have one of the greatest safeties of all time. We'll discuss Ronnie Lott next week. He's one of the greatest safeties of all time. And then on top of that, you absolutely demolish the opponent. The best of the best. They They abused the best the NFL had to offer that season. No question to me. 1989 San Francisco 49ers. Undisputed. Lock it up. Throw away the key. That's it.
There it is.
That's a wrap. Folks, it's been a long one. We did two things. We did coaches and we did players.
We did. Wow, this is one of our longer episodes.
What are we at? An hour and a half?
An hour and a half.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of things going on tonight.
Next week, offensive line and safeties, right?
Offensive line and safeties, and then we got FFA season.
I don't think people are ready for fantasy football coverage.
Oh my God. We're going to have a lineup, folks. We're going to do sleepers. We're going to do busts. We're going to do positions. We're going to do keepers. We're going to do dynasties. We're going to do redraft. We're going to do everything you could possibly imagine.
Everything. Rankings.
Oh, we are 100% ranking, guys.
We're doing the draft and do not draft list.
I am going to shit so much on Lamar Jackson this year.
Listen, I'd fade him too.
Yeah?
I'm fading Lamar. I'm not giving everybody a peek behind the curtain just yet. I have my guys. I have who I like this year. I'm not giving Joe, I can't.
John likes Tua so much.
Listen. Hold on. Time before we get out of here, I need to say something. I'm always 1 year ahead on the quarterbacks.
Oh my God, here we go.
I was ahead on Lamar. I was ahead on Kyler. And I have a theory, but I will leave everyone in limbo for 2 weeks on my theory. Joe knows my theory, and I told him this theory in the car the other day when we went and got Wendy's. I have my theory. I do like Tua this coming year. But you're going to have to listen to FFA coverage.
Very nice.
Little teaser. There you go.
All right, folks. We'll be back at it next week. Pod will be up hopefully by tomorrow. If you got anything, please hit us up on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok. We have it all. We are there. For John McCarthy, my name is Joe Miglio. We will see you all for the finale of the Legend Series next week. Adios.